Where to start? Well, I can start with very old-fashioned, the business card, which you all found, from North Pole to South Pole, and all the ocean in between. The card is made out of potato peel, sustainability. And there is one sentence, bridging humans and nature through documentary photography. Normally, when I don't say anything, you might say, oh, he's a nature photographer. But a photographer ends, well, kind of ends, it makes a photo, and that's the purpose. For me, it's a start of something. It's a tool. I use my photography worldwide in different realities to build bridges. Bridges, if this works at least, bridges between different spheres of realities, of data, of policy and strategy reports, of business reports and so on. Because all of these realities, they have a different language, and image is universal. So for the last 15 years, I've been documenting the front lines of climate change, as you heard in the introduction as well, and I will try to bring you from North to South Pole to remote island states, but not all it has to be remote. It's visible everywhere. 11,400 years ago, the geological era of the Holocene started, after the last ice age. But human beings, is us, as one species, we are leaving such an impact on this planet. 8 million species, according to the United Nations, and 1 out of 8 million, 1 million out of 8 million, are being threatened to a certain extent. Because the way we act, because the way we eat, because the way we treat land, and we take natural resources and so on. So the Anthropocene is the era that I'm trying to document. I'd like to start where it all started for me as well, 15 years ago in the high Arctic. A documentary photography, it means that all photos you will see tonight, they're not manipulated, because I try to be a witness, I try to bring a visual, clear reality, the reality that is out there to you. To young people, old people, universities, policymakers, the industry, and also scientists. So this is how the Arctic should look like, and sometimes it still does. This is winter. The only manipulation I did was an overexposed photo, so a couple of seconds, because there is a storm. It's almost a whiteout. You don't see the snowflakes, because it's a couple of seconds of exposure. This is the high Arctic in winter. And for me, it started the mission that I carry out, it's a life's work right now, is really to raise awareness, which started really through people, through what I saw, the environment, but especially people. People living in the high Arctic, Sami, Inuit, indigenous people, because they have this concept of nature which is not a distinction with ourselves. They're part of it. It's a holistic principle. It's something. If you take something away, if you hunt a polar bear, a narwhal, anything, if you take a plant, you take something from an entity that you belong to. So they understand this. They will never hunt something they won't use. They use everything to the last centimeter. I saw it with my own eyes, how a narwhal was cut up. Everything is used, even the eye, everything. So this is a whiteout. Well, almost. You still see a group of people, but there is no horizon anymore. One infographic, all the rest are photos, I promise you. Eco and ego. You can say that the modern world is something like what you see on the left. We are the top of the food pyramid, we take whatever we want. We are disconnecting to nature. Half of the human population is living in cities. Here at the right, this is more how indigenous people will think. And there are still a lot of indigenous people, but their habitat are really at stake. Their habitat is changing, as it does for many animals. I will show you some examples tonight, like the polar bear and the narwhal. And so it's a matter of fact that the changes are happening so fast that both animals, but also humans, have no time to adapt. So environmental loss becomes cultural loss as well. Part of my work is also documenting how these people live and trying to retell their story, the old ancient knowledge that these people carry. Have a look. We stay in the Arctic for now. The Arctic in winter in Spitsbergen 10 years ago, and exactly the same spot 10 years later in June. The other one was March. No more snow, no more ice. Permafrost thaw. I have a collaboration with the European Space Agency, so once in a while, like this one, I will tell you when. This is from space, it's not me taking this photo. I looked up in the database of the Sentinel-2 from the Copernicus program of the European Space Agency, the coldest day in Svalbard. This was an aerial photo, and of course cloudless as well. Sentinels are still sensitive for clouds. I did the same for the warmest day. So the power of image, coldest, warmest. We are now 1,200 kilometers from the geographical North Pole. So have a look at this photo. It's one that I try to show at many conferences. I love this photo. It's called Arctic Layer Cake. The middle of the photo is the horizon. And above the horizon, you have one and the same mountain, I mean. It's one mountain, some clouds, a bit of yellow. The pointer will not work on this LED, so I have to point with my hands here. You see some shadings there, but it's really what this is about. It's about this here, these S-shaped curves. This used to be a glacier that eroded in the mountain. Something that is a witness of what once was and is not there anymore. On the foreground, you see how permafrost thaw looks like. No more snow, no more ice. You see a piece of plastic, a tube, and even a piece of a pellet, so human artifacts are popping up. A consequence of this is that soil degrades and cracks open, and methane is being released. Methane being a greenhouse gas, that is 84 times more powerful in the first 20 years, capable of capturing the heat. And when you have too many of these greenhouse gases, you have the greenhouse effect. We call it global warming. So I document all over the Arctic, with the exception of Russia, unfortunately. I try to also document this. So these are different photos: Greenland, Arctic Canada, and Svalbard or Spitsbergen, like this one. You actually still see the frozen layer. Everything on top is called the active layer, which is getting thicker and thicker year by year. Actually, Svalbard is like an open-air experiment almost, because climate change is happening everywhere. But the Arctic, and especially Svalbard, where our Gulf Stream that gives us our moderate climate is ending as well and turning, it is warming up 4 to 6 times faster than anywhere else in the world. And we need those polar regions, both North and South Pole. We need the ice sheets on Greenland, on Antarctica, because these are barometers, they're indicators. They have a function. They need to cool down our planet. They need to reflect the energy of the sun, the heat. And the problem is when it melts, and I'll show you later, then heat is trapped either in the atmosphere or in the ocean. A couple of more photos of how this permafrost thaw looks like with the active layer. Now this is my friend Noah. I think it was September 23 when I was in Arctic Bay in Canada looking for narwhal. Noah plays the guitar, just like I do, but he told me something alarming. He said, I saw a butterfly this year. A butterfly in the high Arctic. So a big consequence of what is happening, the changes that are visible even in our generation, is that, well, vegetation starts to shift. Polar bear, they need sea ice. Sea ice is melting, it's unreliable, it's coming too late, or it breaks up too early. And so, well, then they're looking for food. They go south, they head in villages. I think it was 2 years ago that there was a polar bear in Iceland. In Iceland, there are no polar bear in Iceland, so somehow a polar bear ended up in Iceland and was shot. He also saw bumblebees. Interesting. Noah is an Inuk, and he sees how his environment is changing. And that counts for all cultural aspects. This is in Greenland. So I decided for tonight to show you my latest project, which was again in Svalbard, in Spitsbergen, July. I was joining a team of 8 scientists from Klaipėda University in Lithuania, from Latvia and also Taiwan. And we were looking for plastics, microplastics, but also forever chemicals, PFAS, PFOS, and for the lagoon that was created by retreat of this glacier. This is an aerial photo taken by the Norwegian Polar Institute in 1936. I'm not sure if you can read that from the back, 1936, so it's not mine. Huh? But this is mine. This is how it looks now. Do you see that? That's 1.2 kilometers of a retreat of this glacier. A healthy glacier system is touching the ocean. It is refueling, let's say. It's circular. But the problem is that glaciers are dying. We all know that, but I visualize it. And there is a whole lagoon there with a spit. I think the name is a spit in English that was created. You see us there. So you have some ponds, you have some, well, terrain, and life is present. We find small, I forgot the name now, I don't know anymore, I'm sorry, small, like shrimp-like creatures, which is interesting. So life flourishes also. But the thing is, it's a complete, entire new ecosystem after a glacial retreat. This is after the last ice age, so this is where the glacier used to be in 1936. And again, during these 2 weeks that I was amongst these people, we saw this. Almost like a sinkhole, right? With mud flows. This is the permafrost thaw. It's visible everywhere. I asked Sergey, our friend and expedition leader as well, to be present on the photo so you see the scale as well. So the lagoon, I'll show you a couple of photos. So we're using a manta net to, let's say, scrape off the top layer of the lagoon. This is some samples we're taking in the ponds and the soil in between. And we did find a lot. Microplastics, well, theoretically, it's smaller than 5 millimeter. Of course, plastics, well, they degrade, they become smaller, but then it's still plastics. So micro becomes nano, ends up in our veins, ends up in the air, in the rain that is pouring down. And so it's in the rain cycle, it's in the water cycle. It's in the ocean, and you have circulation. All oceans are connected. It's only one ocean in the end. It's a political statement as well, but it's true. In theory, a fish could swim everywhere. 2/3 of this planet is ocean, 1/3 of it is, well, half of it, so 1/3 of our planet is the Pacific, but it's all connected. So even here at the most remote spot you can imagine, I did my own experiment. I walked 100 meters. 100 meters on the shoreline. And this is what I found, just with the bare eye. Not being a scientist, no methodology. The only thing I said is straight on 100 meters and I will just take what I find. That's what I found. So a big part of my work is also, sorry, I'm just going to take some water here, is also related to biodiversity, because the climate crisis is also a biodiversity crisis, something that might be forgotten sometimes. So as I said in the beginning, 1 out of 8 million, us, are threatening 1 million species. So everything started for me as well about 15 years ago in Svalbard, with Sami and Inuit in general, but also with something that is called the global seed vault. Have you heard of the global seed vault? I guess you did right now. But 15 years ago, I think I might have seen 2 people say yes instead of 20. So it started in 1984 when the Nordic countries, Scandinavia, Iceland, and Finland, 5 countries, so Denmark, Sweden, and Norway as well, they said, well, we have these seeds, indigenous seeds within our national borders. We have no clue how long we can preserve these seeds. And if we do, if they germinate, if they're still viable after 20, 30 years. So they started an experiment. They said, well, we look to Svalbard, because that's the high Arctic. By treaty after the First World War, it is belonging, I shouldn't say belonging, the sovereignty is granted to Norway, because it's a bit political, so sovereignty is granted to Norway. And they used to have mining, coal, really good quality coal. Now the last mine has stopped ceasing to exist, and so they closed it. But so an abandoned coal mine, the Norwegian government owns it, and deep inside that frozen mountain, 300 meters deep, they said, well, we have this shaft, we put a door, we put a copper engraving on the door, which is saying Frøyhal. Frøy used to be in the Norwegian mythology, the god for agriculture. It's not so visible, I'm sorry, but there is a date there, November 10th, 1984. This is the moment that they decided to put a black steel container behind this door, a locked door. This is a project I worked 8 years on in total. This is a container in a mine, 300 meters deep in the high Arctic. And even now, after, I'm not so good at math, about 30 years, 40 years, it warmed up 3 degrees Celsius. It's incredible. But so they have put 20 boxes, wooden boxes, in this black container. It's a 100-year experiment. They decided to put different seeds, samples, crops, varieties from these 5 countries equally spread over these 20 boxes. And every 5 years they would open a box and check the viability. That's what's still happening. And we learned a lot from this already. So it's called a 100-year trial, and the intergovernmental organization, Nordic Gene Bank, is in charge for the management. And there is an advisory board with the FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. Once a year they come and check the, how do you say that, the conditions and so on. So this was also my entry. So this box, for example, you have to read it reversely, will be opened on the 1st of December in 2066. To give you an idea, that's a sub-experiment, X1, 3, and so on. So this box, for example, in 2081. This one was opened in 2021. So you see this basically very simple experiment. But out of this came an idea. The idea came from Carrie Fowler. And Carrie called the Ministry of Agriculture of Norway, and he said, look, we have this experiment. You have basically, well, Spitsbergen. You have these Arctic mountains. Let's build this thing for the world, the global seed vault. We can build a construction, a tunnel with like a freezer. And actually, this is a very good room because this is kind of the size of one of these 3 rooms. Because they did build it in 2006, and in 2 years it was finished. This was actually, it's taken in 2013. So in 2014, I entered the Global Seed Vault. I still think I'm the only Belgian that did that. Very few people did. So now they built another facility for the inventory and so on for new seed samples. So the idea was a backup, safety backup for the world. Every country has a gene bank. Gene banks are, well, breeding seeds. They're experimenting, they're preserving, and they're making seeds genetically more reliable, resilient against droughts, against floods, against salinity, because with rising sea levels, and I will get there with you tonight, you have a lot of impact. You have a lot of crops, a lot of varieties that are getting lost, just like fauna, flora is getting lost. And so the same thing for our food biodiversity, our variety that came out of 13,000 years of agricultural history. When it started in Mesopotamia, when people start to settle down, irrigation channels and so on, first cities and so on. So let's go inside. You have the door, a ventilation shaft, and a piece of art. This is how it looks like. I'm able and I have permission to show the plans. I made a book out of it as well, Frozen Heritage it's called. So this is from top down. You have 3 rooms, 130 meters inside this frozen mountain. And again, now we are cooling it, -18. There is called the Plant Treaty, which states that this should be the norm for the world to preserve seeds. But the mountain itself, deep inside, is warming up 2 degrees. In the coal mine, 3-4 degrees already after such a short time, so it's happening fast. So this already is a really rare photo because the door never opens. Once, twice, sometimes 3 times a year. Nobody's allowed to get in. With the help of what is called the Crop Trust, intergovernmental organization, seeds are being brought together worldwide, and they come all together on the same plane to that truck inside the mountain, getting inventorized. And note this. This is a tunnel towards these 3 rooms. That's my photo. That's not my photo. Because I have 2 photos that are not mine, I will tell you. Because there was already a leak. Can you imagine? This thing is built for hundreds of years in the future generations, your great-great-grandchildren, so that they have still the seed crops that we know, that we have. Already there was infiltration of water. Luckily, no seeds were harmed. Nothing. But in the tunnel, there was water. Permafrost thaw. And so it was enforced. Enforced, and everything like, you say that cooling system and circulation and so on was built separately, as you see. But that's quite something, I think. It's quite a paradox. So I'll show you where this photo is taken. So we go inside, that's the entrance. We go inside, that's the first door, which gives you access to the hall. And then this photo is taken here. So all the ice crystals, minus 18 degrees, and this is behind that locked door. This is inside the global seed vault. I'm showing you the entire food collection of Canada, and at the right, the International Rice Resource Institute. These are two remarkable photos because it's surpassing geopolitical tension. This is the People's Republic of Korea, North Korea, and that's a Syrian box, which was taken out because the gene bank in Damascus was destroyed in the civil war. So already it proved its use. Let's go outside again. I have to speed up a bit, I think. We're still in the Arctic. The symbol of the Arctic, polar bear, they need sea ice, but sea ice is melting. It's scattering up in small pieces. And a photo like this really shows you what is happening, because polar bear are marine mammals, they can swim, but they will not be able to hunt the seal that you see, sunbathing seal. The water is dark. It absorbs the sun's heat. The ocean is warming up because of that. It needs to reflect the ice. And you see actually in this photo that in the reflection of the water you see the glacier tongue, you can say, that is basically retreating, and the whole entire glacier system is diminishing in volume and eventually dying on many places. So this is a Northwest Passage. Arctic Bay is here. That's where I took the photo with Noah. And there's another creature. There are so many species, so these are almost symbolic species. This is the narwhal. Narwhal used to have a dorsal fin. Through evolution, the fin is gone, because narwhal, their main predator is killer whale, or orca. So what do? Well, they're looking for a big patch of sea ice, and they go in the middle of it, and they hide just underneath. And orca, as smart as they are hunting in group and so on, several techniques. Really interesting how they communicate and so on, but they cannot catch this animal. Sea ice is melting, is disappearing. This animal is migrating. Will it get extinct? I don't know. The question is, will it adapt in time? That's a question. Let's go from North to South Pole, symbol of the South Pole. Emperor penguin, the largest of all, but also Adelis, emperor and Adelie penguins. I should, I can always tell you more and more details, but I have a time slot here, so... So these are 2 species out of 16, depending which paper you follow, kind of 16 species of penguins that need 9 months for the entire cycle, life cycle, and so they need sea ice to hatch on. This is a very symbolic photo. It's called La Solitude. Another consequence of melting sea ice, and you can see that, you see this reddish, brownish, yellowish color, greenish even, that's algae, phytoplankton, growing underneath sea ice. No sea ice, less phytoplankton. It's the basis of the food triangle. On top of that is zooplankton, krill, small fish, larger fish, penguins, leopard seal, orca. Orca always on top. So I joined a scientific team catching penguins, because we need to understand what will happen. We see that an entire colony was getting extinct. I think it was George Island or something. It's not a long time ago. We took physiognomical measurements. We also geotagged them so that we can see how they migrate and where they go to and what will happen. Unfortunately, we did find also bird flu that year in what is called the Amundsen Sea. So the part of the continent is called Mary Birdland. The Belgian research station is somewhere here. And this is where we found bird flu. Other type of research, acoustic research, hydrophones through the sea ice to find out how also whales are migrating. So I don't have a lot of time, but I will explain a little bit. This is the core, the ice core that was used on the Belgica 125 years ago by Adrien de Gelache, our Belgian hero, one of them, because Belgium does has really a history of exploration. So we need to understand the ice. That's a second photo that is not mine. I still don't have a good photo of a beautiful ice core. I like this one because you see clearly a volcanic eruption. So ice coring is important. We need to look at the ice and drill deep in the fresh supply of ice, which is the ice sheet, glacial ice. Because little snowflakes, when they fall down, they trap bubbles of air. And these bubbles of air with the isotopes can be used to reconstruct temperature. We can examine the amounts of oxygen, but also CO2, and we'll have to look at carbon, of course. So this is the way to understand climate change and the cycles that are happening. Because there is a cyclic, here you see some small corings in Svalbard, just to show you. Because, of course, it is a cyclic event. We have ice ages and so on. But we see that there is an enormous amount of carbon, for example, in the atmosphere in the last 200 years, since the engine was developed, Industrial Revolution. So, very short, the deepest point ever was Russia, 3,700 meters, but they only looked back in time with their cores 420,000 years. And they had to stop coring because they hit an underwater lake called Vostok Lake. And the question is still, is it contaminated by the drill or not? Because it's really interesting to find something on this, under this ice sheet, almost 4 kilometers deep, with life. And we don't know anything about it. But that's a whole different story. We can always talk with a beer after this talk. So, but EPICA DC, the European project, there is now beyond EPICA C. Please remember this name and look it up, because they have a great blog. You can really follow their work. They're right now drilling. They have a new drill, a new core, 2,800 meters, even less deep because it's all relative. And they look back almost 1 million years back in time. I think they reached 1 million years. And this is really important. It's important because now I have to have a look, just to be sure. So the problem is that about 1 million years ago, ice ages, glacial cycles, they shifted from 40,000 years suddenly to 100,000 years. And scientists, they don't know why. So the ice paleontologists, they're looking to solve this mystery. This is the Niels Bohr Institute, part of the University of Copenhagen, where I had special access to also document. So let's go back to the Antarctic. This is an iceberg, the beauty of our planet. It's part of what I do to show what is at stake. This is another iceberg, same kind of iceberg, but I show you impact. So a photo evokes different emotions as well. You see a piece is missing, a chunk is really already afloat. This is also floating. Yeah? This is fresh ice floating on salt water. On the southernmost part of the world, going only north to saltier water, it melts, contributing to sea level rise. You see the next crack is already ready, is already visible. You see different in color, so different layers and different substance and so on. This one rotated 90 degrees. Before it did, you see how surface water was carving in, warming by day, carving in the ice, cooling down by night, and then it rotated. Really interesting photo. We have to look at ice, we have to look at the atmosphere. This was also, I finished this project this year, didn't publish yet, I will, but sometimes I take my time. This is Jungfraujoch. Jungfraujoch in the middle of Switzerland, the middle of the European continent, far from cities, far from direct pollution. They're measuring. The Université de Liège, University of Liège, they have the oldest instruments there since the 70s. I went 4 times with the approval, of course, and with the backup of the Belgian embassy in Switzerland. Thank you for that. So when all tourists go down, I went up and I took these marvelous photos, if I can say, because the setting is amazing. And here you see how these instruments are being changed. So they're really observing the CO2 amounts in the atmosphere. They're observing pollution in general, the sun, and even the stars. This is a photo, now I'm jumping from here to there. We're now going to the South Atlantic Ocean. This is a photo of the most remote island in the world that is inhabited. It's not Pitcairn, that's the first that comes up with many people. It's also not Easter Island, you just take a plane, it's not the same. This is Tristan da Cunha. It is British overseas territories. It's out of the sea, of the sailing route. Normally you go more northwest to St. Helena if you cross the South Atlantic Ocean, so they don't see a lot of ships. Now, these people, being British, they live like indigenous people. That's why I was so fascinated. Because they don't have a clock. I didn't see one clock on the wall. They have a supermarket with 7 lists. There are only 7 family names there. It's quite interesting. And they just put on the list whatever the family needs. And then it's a matter of waiting for the next supply ship to come. We circumnavigated the island. We had to wait 2 days. It's really very difficult to access. There's also no port or anything. They're trying to really construct something to break the waves so you can, behind with a Zodiac, really end on shore, and that's ashore, and that's what I did. There's only one village, Edinburgh of the Seven Seas. Really interesting island. It's also part of the group, so yeah, I specialize also in sub-Antarctic islands, but that's not what this lecture is about. This is Gough Island, another island that few people have seen. It's really, really remote, it's very windy, and it's known for the mega mice, invasive species, another issue. Quite a lot of issues, I'm sorry. So, shipwreck, you have always 4 problems. I mean, always 4 animals that pop up on almost 99.9% of all islands, which are mice, rats, cats, and also rabbits. The latter 2, and they were sometimes deliberately introduced to cope with mice or rats, or just as, food. They just released rabbits, thinking, next year when we come, there will be 100 rabbits, and we just always have meat. But of course, they eat something. So they take away something that was in balance. Nature always looks for balance. So invasive species is also a topic that I write about, that I investigate with my camera. I bring you now to the Pacific. The Pacific is, the place to my heart as well. For the last 7 years, I'm returning. Basically, you have 3 regions. Polynesia, the Triangle, Hawaii, New Zealand, Easter Islands, Micronesia, it's named for that for a reason, really tiny island states. And then you have Melanesia, which is really tribal still, really interesting. All of the yellow parts are the economic zones of either countries or territories which I visited and documented. And my focus went out throughout the years, especially to 3. The Marshall Islands, Kiribati, that's how you pronounce this, Kiribati. As you see, it's really all over, and Tuvalu, because these 3 are atoll states. Atoll states are imploded volcanoes by origin. And as you see, you see only the rim, what is left. They don't have heights, they don't have space. They have the front line of climate change, let's say. They have the infiltration of salt water, which is affecting crops, which is causing coastal erosion. All things that you can see, actually. And if I look at this photo, and again I have to come here, you see how they're using the bedrock here with explosives to build seawalls. I don't know if it's visible, but there is a wall on both sides of this road here. This is European Space Agency, to show you an atoll from above. So I went through the Kwajalein Atoll. This is a story I someday will have to write down, because it was really crazy. It's a military base from the US, so I was escorted, had to leave my luggage behind, sniffed by ducks, and so on. It's a really special place. But I needed to go to Ibai, and I managed. Ibai is the most densely populated piece of land in the Pacific. Of course, I tried to take symbolic photos. You see how densely populated it is. But I was always aware that at these places, well, people don't have construction material. So again, you see how they used this, bedrock, coral reef, to really construct something. At the lower part of this photo, the south part, you see the walls, some of the walls, as you see. So that ocean was always a bridge. Think about it. 1/3 of the one-third of the planet is a Pacific. These tiny, tiny islands. If you're on an island like that, this ocean all around you, daily reality, you see every day the ocean, maybe 10 hours in a day. That ocean was always a bridge. The bridge to the neighbor, to your family. These are atoll states, so you have islands next to each other, in line, right? So you take a canoe and you go to your neighbor. But that ocean in 2 generations became a threat for culture, a threat for future generations, to the extent that a country like Tuvalu has now been granted citizenship by Australia. I don't know if you read that. It's really interesting. Think about that. So they're losing their land, literally. Even the state in the end. So I like this one. I've been there. It's called LIB, L-I-B. Really difficult journey. We had engine problems, and you see it's all blue. So it's pretty scary. I mean, I sailed 4 months, but this was one moment in my life I was scared. Because I was like, what do we do now? We can't row, we don't have a sail, we can't do anything. So what is special about it? Well, it has a fresh lake, a freshwater lake. These people, they have water, they will survive. But that's really an exception. So the main issue, like Nauru, for example, another weird island, Nauru used to be, it's phosphate by origin. It's guano. Guano, bird poo, that has been building up and building up. And it's a fertilizer. Before we had pesticides, it was worth gold. You have the Guano Act in the US claiming, oh, we put flags on all these pieces of guano that we find, and it becomes US territory. That's how you have Howland and Baker and all these, Johnston, all these weird atolls. This is a story of a modern story of ecocide. They excavated and excavated and excavated and mined to such an extent that the whole environment is polluted, both territorial waters, but also on land. And now their economic zone is being leased out because they need money. So I should not go into politics, but it's difficult not to sometimes. I'm really neutral, by the way, but Nauru is a bit of a strange story. Look at the seawall. Another problem, finance. Suddenly, no more money. They started to build. This is the open water. An atoll state is round because it's an imploded volcano. You have the lagoon, you have the outside wild ocean. So these people are still not able to protect themselves. When I was in Cook Islands, I witnessed a hurricane myself. This is the photo where I normally say the bridge to the neighbor, right? So, yeah, some photos. This is actually the house where I stayed, the first time in Kiribati, 3 weeks. And you see the only thing they have is coral, dead coral stones, bleached, that they use to build walls, sea walls. Tuvalu, a sovereign state, a voice in the UN like Germany, being the smallest state of the world, coping with, basically erosion, coastal erosion. And the only thing they can really do to mitigate the problem is mangroves, keeping soil together. So millions are being spent all around these islands to build to plant thousands and thousands of mangroves. I even joined 2 days, hard labor. A consequence, of course, is you have to import everything. And that leaves a foot trail. It leaves trails. And it pops up also, it brings up the plastic question, especially single-use plastics, because that's really hot. And again, it washes up everywhere. You have the gyre. You all heard about the great plastic patch, right? What is the name again? But it's the same in the southern hemisphere. I went to Pitcairn Islands. It's ending up there as well. There's nobody raising awareness about that. Well, there is, but too little, too few. This is how an atoll state really looks like. This is another one. The former one was Kiribati or Tuvalu. I'm not sure right now. And this is Marshall Islands. You see, here they just built this wall there because probably that's a vulnerable spot for the village. So this is really making the difference. And we're passing this number. This was being agreed at the Paris Agreement. We are now exceeding 1.5 degrees Celsius relatively to the time before the Industrial Revolution. So a couple of more photos to end with, almost. So this was a commissioned project by the Philippines. These are the Olango Islands. Very traditional, no tourism, but these people are losing their land. The highest point, 1.2 meters. A lot of youth, young children running around. Some solar panels from NGOs mostly. This is this year. This was on the island of Yap, which is the furthest and least accessible of the 4 states of Micronesia. The federal states of Micronesia is a country within the region Micronesia. So you see coastal erosion. Again, you see it everywhere, especially in this region. That's me hiding there in the shade. And again, my point, the cultural aspect as well, and traditions. Palau, this is Palau. Palau has an ecosystem that is flourishing. So they said, let's preserve it. Let's establish marine protected areas. Let's abolish sun cream. they did. And now, if I buy sun cream, it says coral proof, because it used to have a substance which is killing coral reefs. So they're really doing a lot, and they came up with this wonderful idea. I really like it. They came up with the Palau Pledge. It's the only way to enter. It's your visa. You have to promise that the only footprints that you will leave are those that will wash away. What an interesting concept to raise awareness in a very simple way. I'm now showing you a couple of photos that I took throughout the years. This is taken exactly on the equator at noon, where the sun is closest to Earth, perpendicular, to show you the bluest blue of our beautiful ocean. The blue ocean, because the red is filtered immediately, and the blue is what is left. This is how it looks like. This is all 2018. I took the craziest photos during these 5 weeks. Flying fish, another flying fish, showing you how it's using its tail when gravity takes over and it's falling down again and saying, no, 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 I don't want to go yet. So it's still gaining a couple of meters with its tail. Flying squid. When I took this photo, I didn't even know it existed. I was like, what is this? Did I discover a creature? And I showed it to the marine scientist. He said, oh, flying squid. I'm like, flying squid? They fly? That's how it looks like. Some of you might know I'm commissioned by Belspo for the Belgica, visual outreach and dissemination, and I'm really happy that we will sail again next year. So I took some photos in 22. This is all in the Mediterranean. It's a fantastic vessel, a research vessel, the only Belgian one. About 400 square meters of lab space, really multidisciplinary, and very, very stable. Stability is really key. When you're an oceanographer, and you use the rosette with all this, what is called Niskin bottles, sampling bottles, this thing goes down up to 5,000 meters. As a sailor, the ocean for me is horizontal. Oceanographers, they think vertical. They need these geolocations, they know why they choose that exact spot. This ship, if storm comes, it will just within 1 meter be stable with satellite technology and so on. Because it takes up to 2-3 hours if you're that deep to come up again with your winch, with your cable. So at different depths, they will take different samples, and everyone has a different focus, a different field. One is observing carbon or anything like density, physical aspects, carbon, or CFKs, chemical aspects, and others are coping with the biological aspects. So it's all about water. This is only oceanography that I'm showing you. The beauty of science is collaboration, one of the beautiful things about it. And as you see here, these people are sampling, while we are taking a plankton net, random location, in front of Sardinia, about 100 meters deep, and then we are looking at what comes up. Some algae. And when we look closer, and even closer, you see that microplastics is everywhere. Even at the random spot, 100 meters in front of the coast of Sardinia. So it's really important, our changing, environment, and in this case, ocean, needs to be observed. So we have our scientists, we have research vessels, but we have entire systems. We have floats, we have buoys. We need all of those. The global ocean observation system. There is a lot going on, but we need more, and it needs to be fast because it's changing fast. What you see here is a very old kind of program from the United Nations. It's called Argo floats, but it's very efficient. It's basically just being released at water, timing, being released, and it goes under. And it goes under, it releases itself, going 1 kilometer down, staying a week, going 2 kilometers down, staying another week, and then it comes up. And conductivity and temperature, salinity that will be deducted from conductivity and so on, all this data will be sent through satellite to land servers, and it's open source. The whole world can handle it. To end with, I think the title was The Vault, right? Frozen Heritage. There is a third kind of vault that I also raise awareness about, and this is about cultural loss. I told you that worldwide culture is getting lost. This is a vault that was established in that same coal mine, so I'll bring you, to end this slideshow with and presentation, I will bring you back to the Arctic. In that abandoned coal mine, there is also a construction, actually a container, which is called the Arctic World Archive. And they developed a special microfilm, And right now, a lot of institutions and even countries are contributing. You have UNICEF, GitHub, and so on. You have national libraries from Brasilia, from Mexico, and even Vatican City. How interesting. So they're preserving data, any kind of data. It's not digital, it's digitally print on an analog carrier. They don't need anything. No CO2 offset, no electricity. It's just being stored in a dry, cold mine for future generations. It can preserve the content of this, whatever that is being printed on microfilm for 2,000–3,000 years. I contributed with 2 of my projects. You saw some of it. The 3 atoll states, these people, they will lose their land within 100 to 200 years, for sure. And also the Belgica. Why the Belgica? Not for the sake of Belgium, I hope it will still exist by then, but really because of how we are doing the instruments, techniques that we're using to conduct our marine scientific work. So that in the future, 200, 300, 400 years from now, people will see, oh, anno 2022, Talpro 22, that was the expedition on the Belgica, this is what these people used. And that's the data, because also the findings are written on that microfilm. So awareness is really what it is about. It's a matter of time. So I really try to conduct my mission through the lectures, and I want to thank you all to be here tonight, for being here tonight. Also publications, of course. We need the policy level. We really do. And sometimes it's getting very slow. This is in Berlaymont. We need Europe. We need the whole world, actually. So this is the European the European Environment Agency. Outdoor exhibitions. This is the Swiss embassy that helped me a lot. And so, yeah, I also published a couple of books. If you're interested, you all have my card. So this is now heritage in the Hendrik Conscience library in Antwerp. It's really worth a visit. I'm from Antwerp, so always welcome. So I also have a Society for Environmental Awareness, which is an international nonprofit that I raised to continue this mission, because it's going beyond myself. I just started it, so now I have a team, 25 people. Hans Bruinings, who was leading the European Environment Agency, is also in my board. So we try to raise awareness worldwide through educational programs, through lectures. We will make a children's book, but also connecting to nature. So we want to take people out, and it doesn't need to be the pole. Can be anywhere. So that's the ambition, because it's really fresh. In July, we started it. So thank you very much. And if you have questions, I will be very happy to answer. Thank you.
Some of the things that we were not able to cover, I feel like this was super interesting, but it's hard to fill up in 40 minutes a lifetime of dedication and a lot of learnings. And I'd love to pick your brain about some of the things that got left out of your presentation and a lot of your experience.
Okay.
Not just a photographer, you have a lot of a bit of a non-linear career in the space. And for those who don't know, he actually worked previous to this as in the communication for the government.
Flemish Parliament.
Yeah, for the Flemish Parliament. And I'd love to learn more from your experience. What was the catalyst of you taking the leap and completely changing careers from a career that is relatively stable, that is quite predictable, to this sort of advocacy, passion-led projects that has little or no correlation with what you studied or what you did in the past?
Thank you for that question. It's a very personal question, so the answer will be personal as well. I think I should start when I was an 8-year-old boy, being inspired by the old camera collection of my father. And then secretly, I was taking some snaps. And of course, when he developed the film, he said, "This is not me, I didn't take that photo." And so it was clear that I was always passionate and really almost obsessed by the fact that you can really keep a moment in time in a visual. And with that visual, you can put in a message in that. And you can evoke emotions, as I said before. You can give, learnings. You can really carry a message and give information. It's incredible. And so that's one point. I was always trying to connect with nature. So I grew up just outside of Antwerp. And as a young kid, before university, I was on my bicycle trying to look for forests in between all this development that is happening in Belgium. So the ocean, that's also an answer. The ocean was always a number one inspiration for me. I was always attracted to it, also almost obsessed by it, like the beauty of that line, the horizon, nothingness, and all of it at the same time. But then came the factor concern. And that really started when I entered that global seed vault, and with what I learned with being among Sami, first Sami and then later Inuit, which is not easy. It's not easy, but I read about how these people really live and what happened to them. So the human aspect, the colonial aspect, I should say as well. And so then you'll really learn to dig deeper. So they have, let's say, a thicker social level or social phase, but once you're behind that, you really discover. So concern with that passion for photography has molten to that mission, I guess, about 15 years ago. So, yeah.
That's super interesting. So going back to your experience with those local communities, you're a Belgian and an outsider to many of those communities that are very secluded and very protective of their heritage. And you had the very rare opportunity to be part of those indigenous communities and to photograph the Sami and the Inuit and their homelands that they find very sacred. And I'd love to understand, how did you navigate the extractive history of Western explorers while avoiding become another perpetrator of this colonial gaze in your photography?
It's a very good question. So once you enter without knowing anyone in a community like that, you're an intruser. What is the word? Intruser, right? You're like, you know, not one of them. And it's very, you feel it. There is a distance, there is a gap. There is a lot of abuse as well. So it's like, you know, it's not easy. Once you have established your first contact point, you have to understand how Inuits live. So, for example, they say 2 ears, 1 mouth. You don't ask questions. If you ask questions, you will have no answer. And after a week, you will go in despair, right? So the first thing you do is observe, and I like that. I am very impatient in traffic to get here. I'm sorry, I was almost late. 1 hour and a half from Antwerp, can you believe that? But I'm very patient when I'm in a society like that, because I observe, and these people, they live in a very different way, and they have a reason for what is, you know, being perceived if you don't know a lot of their background, and you would say, oh, there is alcohol abuse, and there is this and that, and aggression, and these people don't do anything. It's far beyond that. So they're really having these traditions that we can learn of. There is a key there. A key is that might be part of the solution even for a climate problem, because the way they see their, you know, the world's view and how the humans are fitting in, that's something we should learn of, I think. It's really interesting.
In your work, as I mentioned, you collaborate a lot with governments, a lot with private corporates. Have you ever had to turn down a funding because the source of funding did not align with your mission and the way that you'd like to carry your work?
Also a good question. The answer is yes, but I will not name a company, of course. But sometimes it is double. So I don't want to do greenwashing, but I'm very aware that we need companies, that they are the ones that not only have the financial base, but they're also coming with innovation. They need a legal framework from the politicians, and there is not an alignment. So I try to help also there with what I do to align those two different realities. But to answer your question, it happened. I do assess where my funding is coming from, and I can say no if it doesn't feel well. I do this work also with my heart. I didn't prepare anything. I never did. That's my secret. Because this is what I do. That's who I became as well. So it's from the heart. How can I take money when it doesn't lie to my heart? Even when I can make a magnificent book, I will wait 2 more years and I will find it differently. So, yeah.
And how does your work hold up a mirror to humanity's relationship with nature, and after more than a decade showing the reflection of the way that we establish our own connection with nature? I'd love to learn, have you ever chosen not to publish an image or not to show it because it was too powerful or too dangerous?
First of all, I think the first thing I would like to say is I'm not an activist. It's important to say that, because how can I work in that triangle, neutrally in the middle with all three? I don't want to become an activist. I think it's not my role. I think it's very useful to a certain extent. If it's not aggressive, it's not destroying art. That's my opinion. With all respect for those who do. I respect everyone in the end, or at the base, I should say. Maybe not in the end. But so yes, sometimes for example, I have photos of birds. You all know these kinds of photos that are on the beach and they're dead because of plastic. So I can show you that image. Maybe I should, but I chose not to. And so this is a more harder way to confront people. I think everything that I'm telling, some say, wow, it's quite depressing. I really hope that I somehow still give knowledge, and especially hope. It's very important to give hope. And I think with the harder photos that I also have, when I show that, hope is just in despair. I mean, it's just like slipping out, and you know, we do need hope. So, yeah, I carefully think of that. So to which extent I really want to show, I mean, especially the plastic story, that is, I think, the #1 problem. I mean, maybe that's a silly, I don't know, there's so many problems, but plastic is really something, I mean, think about it. It was found in the stomach of polar bear. Can you imagine? We are breeding plastic. It's in rain now, right now. Think about that. So that is really, maybe I should show even more about plastics, because we need a wake-up call. We came together this year, and we didn't succeed on the global level to find a plastic treaty on the level of the United Nations. We didn't. Too much, belangen, how do you say that? Too much, I don't know the word now. Too much involved, yeah, opportunities. So, yeah, so.
You've also had the opportunity to photograph inside the Shackleton's hut and other very historic expeditions. That many nearly died trying to get there. And I'd love to learn from you. Did you ever question whether or not an expedition is too dangerous, that you'd be risking your life? Or did you ever question if it was worth it for you to make those expeditions?
I did. And the first thing that pops up is 4 months in the Pacific, where I was sometimes sailing without seeing any land for 7 days. And one time we forgot to refuel the water tank. So just imagine, your water is so scarce. You know, same with batteries and everything. So GPS, of course, we had our instruments as well. But the problem is I don't have fear. I don't have fear. I had two times of fear. That was on Mount Kailash when I fainted out of altitude sickness in the west of Tibet, and was that boat trip to Lip, because this was a motorboat, and the waves were pretty high, and we had an engine problem. And that's not having a sail. So I wasn't used to that. I am used to a sail, where you, with the exception of the doldrums, you always have a wind that carry you. So I was like, what do we do? You know, it really felt like hopeless. So, yeah.
And last question for me before we open up to the public. As your last call to action, what is the one thing people in this room can take away from what they learned today, and what can they do with that information? Or what do you hope that they do with that information?
Well, I hope that I gave the message that we're, first of all on the same boat, that everything is really connected, that this is a very small planet where we are really dominant as one species, and that's okay. I mean, I'm not the one saying you should not make children. If it is, in my opinion, that we're really, really exceeding, well, what is exceeding? I mean, there is no limit, but we are with a lot of people, and we are growing still. But I do believe everyone has a certain impact. Every person on this planet, every animal has an impact. So it's you that can decide how much impact, right? By the way, what we eat, the choices that we can make. So I hope with what I do, the visual storytelling, the stories I'm telling, the photos that I'm showing through exhibitions, books, anything I do, that it gives some sparkle of hope of how the reality is looking like, what is the state of our planet, and that it also makes people think. I think, I mean, when I buy something, I really think, buy local, you know, I take trains, I fly a lot, I have to tell you, but I really try not to. It's my ambition to really try not to. So, because of what I do, in the nature of my work, I have to take choices. So sometimes I can't get there by train, but I do pay more to get somewhere if I can go by train. So.
Great, thank you so much for
the
questions. Now, I think we're a bit over time, but we can take a few questions from the public.
Thank you very much for a very powerful presentation. I really like the narrative that you develop and how you use your work with your images, your photography in it. I would like to ask a question coming back to the issue of neutrality, objectivity, and share a bit my opinion as well. I think you're clearly objective in showing images, even if you make choices how you frame them and what you make images of not. I'm not sure whether we can or should be neutral, but given that question mark, how to present oneself, did you consider making photographs in those areas of disrupting activities like deep sea mining ships or military bases or new sea routes that are present there? Because that's also a side of the story that you're telling, no?
Yes, thank you for that question. It is a very hot question for me because you named the two things that I'm actually in the make of a new project. So I'm applying to get on board of one of these ships doing the research in relation to deep sea mining, which is happening right now already. And the same counts for the Northeast Passage. I will have to wait. I really tried to enter Russia, but I shouldn't because of my passport, let's say, and everything I did already. So probably I will not. I was really disencouraged by many people on a certain level that no. But then there is a Northwest Passage. Well, I also need financial means for that. So it's very, very, very expensive to operate in Arctic Canada. I saw that with the expedition to Arctic Bay, which was an Explorers Club flag expedition, by the way. But it was, like 1 week, 6,000 euros, just like that. And you don't have anything in return. It's just very expensive to get there. Those planes, they charge whatever. They have a monopoly. Those Inuit villages, they have one hotel for the pilots of those planes. You know, it's like that. Same with the Pacific. Many of the photos you saw, almost everything, with the exception of Spitsbergen, maybe, is not touristic at all. So to get there to operate, I need to do my research. I need to have a base, you know. I need to have some kind of connection to the outside world to work with, to charge batteries and so on. So I always have my Garmin. If you're interested, you have my card, subscribe to the newsletter, and you can follow me. I have this Garmin InReach when I'm at sea. But thank you for that question.